I'm so glad that you're here in person. These were the first words out of the mouth of a patient who I went to see who was struggling with anxiety due to a recent bone marrow transplant. It was the beginning of COVID, and she was in the hospital alone without in person visitors for about over 30 days. The only human contact she had was with providers, once, maybe twice a day on rounds, and with nurses whose sole role was really to provide care. This seemingly ordinary statement has taken on a whole new meaning in the past year. I'm a psychiatrist and an expert in telebehavioral health. I'm part of a field that prides itself on empathy and enhancing human connection by sitting with someone in a room, listening and hearing them, but also by being with them in the space. We often talk about sitting with the emotions in the room. We feel the despair of a family member whose husband has just passed away, or the joy when one of my patients tells me that they're cancer-free. I've also seen all of the amazing benefits of virtual behavioral health care. It has improved the availability of mental health providers to see patients. It has allowed more privacy for patients where there is often stigma. It's decreased wait times and no-show rates. And it has supported patients presenting with mental health symptoms in rural emergency rooms. And even with all of the good that technology has contributed to behavioral health care, it would be hard to spend all day only having telehealth visits with only virtual connections, as telehealth and virtual visits alone are not enough to provide optimal mental health care. I know that there's evidence that virtual visits are just as good as in-person visits, and that overall patients and providers like them. But I also know that when we only do virtual visits or meetings, we lose something. There's a feeling that something is missing. I don't think that this is particularly a controversial statement, but maybe it is for someone who's supposed to be a telehealth guru. Someone who prior to COVID would give talk after talk about how vital telehealth could be in providing care, especially to rural patients with mental health needs. But we all know what it's been like to be at home in back-to-back virtual meetings, to have our kids in virtual school, to be at virtual retreats. And for the most part, while the information is transferred effectively, I think we can all agree that at least for some things, if not most, in person is better. So when I think about all that we can provide with telemental health, the increased access, the ease of use for patients, amongst the many benefits, it's also essential that we have some way to maintain in-person human connection. I often think back to what I thought the future would be like. And for me as a kid, watching Saturday morning cartoons growing up in the 80s, it was the Jetsons. Just so we're all on the same page, the Jetsons was set in the year 2062 and was about a family of the future. George, the father, Jane, the mother, Judy, his daughter, and Elroy, his son. What's striking is that in this version of the future, the family is actually all riding to work together. Even more striking is that a teenage girl takes time prior to being sent off into space to give her father a hug. In this future where people drive flying cars that turn into briefcases, people actually tend to spend more time together in the presence of technology. It's not only the Jetsons that talks about this. This article is actually from the 1950s. It's an ad about the first self-driving car. And what again is so striking to me is that this family is using the extra time they have to turn around and play a board game together. Technology is being used to enhance personal connection and face-to-face time. And I think that they were onto something. Touch and face-to-face interactions are essential to both human happiness and to providing exceptional mental health care. But what does the science say? This brings me to what we lose with telecommunication. The nonverbals, the feeling. We are missing significant meaning and context when we just listen to someone's speech or see part of a person's face on a screen. A few weeks ago, I saw an outpatient in my psycho-oncology clinic, and I went to meet them in the waiting room. He had arrived with his wife, and quite quickly, I noticed he was in a wheelchair. So I, of course, offered to wheel him back. And when we got outside of the exam room, he actually told me, it's fine, I can actually walk, and that I can get up on my own. When we got to room 3, he actually started to get out of the wheelchair. And at that point, his wife sort of rushed over and hovered over him. You could tell that he was very irritated, and she was very anxious. And he eventually let her know that he got this on his own, and that he could walk into the room and said, honey, go ahead. So much information was obtained in that minute or two. How differently would I have viewed the situation on video? Would I have asked about his walking? Would I have noticed? Would his wife have even been on screen for a virtual visit? Would I have gotten an inkling of their dynamic and how his functioning was contributing to his mood symptoms and marital discord? It's not just nonverbal communications we lose in virtual interactions. As a society with the COVID pandemic and with virtual everything, which again has had such tremendous upsides, we're a society that has been starved for touch. Touch has been shown to be essential to human connection and to physical health, boosting immune function amongst other things, as well as mental health. Those deprived of physical touch have been shown to struggle more with anxiety and depression. And we have all seen that despite the growing amount of virtual mental health programs, many people are still struggling, and some are struggling more. So what's the solution? The foundation of all of our telemental health programs are that they include a combination of both in-person and virtual components. This is what leads them to be successful and sustainable. It's not only a provider on a screen. In our programs, there's a social worker on the ground in person to do an evaluation in a rural emergency room, who then has access to telehealth consultation with a provider. Patients can go in person to their rural mental health clinic, but be connected to a psychiatrist virtually where they didn't have any psychiatrists before. In our nursing home telehealth programs, we provide virtual consultation, but also have nurses who complete site visits and work with frontline staff on the ground and in person to enhance care. As an expert in telebehavioral health, I have learned this. The best telebehavioral health programs have some component of in-person human interaction. And technology is best used to enhance and be an adjunct to this interaction, not in place of it. I hope that we can all strive for a future more in line with that described in the Jetsons, where we continue to spend more time together with technology, where we use technology to actually enhance our time together, where we can sit down and eat together with the luxury of having a machine cook for us and then spit it out on the table. Let's embrace technology, but not at the cost of embracing each other.